I think of all the industries I've become familiar with, healthcare has the greatest potential for coming up with the greatest variety of incremental and transformational innovations. The people tend to be very well educated. The mission matters a lot. There are a lot of incentives to do well. So the raw ingredients, the human capital, the money is there. What's not there, where there's a lot of doubt, where there's a lot of uncertainty, do you have the right incentives or do you have perverse incentives? Do you have the kind of incentives where people are rewarded for doing an old technique better and cheaper rather than something that's new and dramatically better, but a bit more expensive with a little higher degree of uncertainty? Those kinds of probabilistic and stochastic calculations, I think, are a deterrent to the kind of innovation, investment, and outcomes most people would like to see in healthcare. The question and challenge of culture cannot be in any way, shape, or form overstated. The guy who made McKinsey, Marvin Bower, once said that culture is the way we do things around here. Right. And innovation is something that fundamentally changes the way we do things around here. Hospital culture, healthcare culture is particularly awkward because, as the point that you were making, there's the intimacy of the one-on-one where you can literally see the person you're caring for and they can see you. And the challenge of that becomes just a speck on an ocean of process and compliance and rules and regulations. I believe, and this is a harsh thing to say, I believe that that most healthcare institutions are poor stewards of their own cultures and do a remarkably poor job of articulating how they want to evolve, let alone transform their culture. There's a wonderful line from Marshall McLuhan. It goes, "Whoever discovered water, it wasn't a fish." Because the fish live in the thing. People live in their own culture. They're not aware of it. I think one of the great things about disruptive innovation and innovators, people from outside your institution and industry, is that it forces you to revisit your fundamentals. The bad thing is most organizations are very protective and defensive when under threat. But the opportunities here, the innovation opportunities here are so great, they need to err on the side of being open. And that's why I'm glad to be part of an open innovation event here in Cardiff. The question of openness and transparency is really as much an issue of technology as culture. I'm old-fashioned in this regard and believe that people are adults. Most people are adults. Children are children, but adults are adults. And adults should have, in my philosophical view, the right and the opportunity and the option to choose. And the whole notion of informed consent in an environment where technology changes transparency, I think, is a fascinating one. Because 20 years ago, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Google, we didn't have LinkedIn. I think this is a cultural change that is going to occur, dare I use the word, naturally, because more people now are growing up with a higher expectation that privacy is something that is oftentimes shared as much as preserved. So I think to a very large extent, some of the concerns you have are going to, if not go away, are going to diminish. And I think most adults are prepared to have a good conversation about transparency and privacy if the benefits to them and the community are perceived as outweighing the costs. To me, the axis and the unit of analysis is not whether an innovation is disruptive or disruptive enough. To me, the issue is the perception and the reality of value. I have a quick heuristic definition of innovation. Innovation is the conversion of novelty into value. That means when anybody talks about an innovation, you should break it into three parts. To whom is it novel? What's the value and who gets the value? And what's the conversion process? Is it an intimate conversion or is it a scalable conversion? So it's a nice operational definition. But innovation is a means to an end. To me, the real question is innovative to what end? Innovation, is it a spice? Is it an ingredient? Or is it the whole meal? So the reason why I wrote the book that I did, Who Do You Want Your Customer to Become? I want you to think about your innovation, not just as a way of meeting a customer need or satisfying a customer or even delighting a customer. It's how are you transforming the customer? How does your innovation transform and add value to that customer, that client? How is your innovation an investment in the human capital, competencies, and capabilities of your customers and clients? Innovation isn't an exchange, it's an investment. What's the return on the investment? If the entrepreneur or innovator can't give me a good answer to that question, I ask them to think more rigorously and, pun intended, more innovatively. The best innovators always come up with answers that impress.